Thanks, Brian. Our speaker today is well known to many of you. He's Bob Arrington. He's been practicing law in Kingsport since 1975 and works with Wilson and Worley. You might also know Bob from his many areas of service in this community, including being a past president of the Downtown Rotary Club, past president of the chair, the Chamber of Commerce, past president of the Law Association. It goes on and on. He's been very involved and a great leader within our community. I was joking with him and I told him I'd love to have him come join our club, and we promise we won't make him be president if he'll just come join. So maybe we can work on him for that. He's got a lot of hobbies. His wife Deborah and he have 3 cats, and I learned about Bob being an author by reading his column in the Times News. And so he's going to talk to us today about writing, publishing, being an author, and about his 3 books. A lot of people could only wish to write one. Bob has written 3. Please welcome Bob Arrington.
You know, when Kitty was talking about I was past this and past that, the things that I used to be and do as a listed is getting distressingly long. Maybe you can say I'm just past it or almost past it. In any event, that the subject matter I was asked to talk about was my 3 novels. And I'm going to talk to you about writing and how I started and how I got into these 3 books and publishing them in particular. I'll tell you a little bit about Kindle Direct Publishing. And then I'll answer your questions, and I'm happy to do as much Q&A as anybody wants to do. But I have been writing fiction of sorts ever since I was probably in junior high school. And of course I didn't keep anything from junior high or high school, but I did a few little stories. I went to college and took creative writing in addition to my degree in journalism, which is now called mass communications. I believe at my alma mater. And then I sort of took a long hiatus from it because I went to law school. And I got out and came here and was hired by Morstow, Waddell and Ledford, which merged in 2005 with Wilson, Worley and Gamble to form the present firm. Its full name is Wilson, Worley, Moore, Gamble and Stout. And I am now of counsel with that firm, which is legalese for semi-retired. So I still show up, but not as much. And I'm trying desperately to turn over litigation responsibilities to younger lawyers who have more energy than I do. But I wrote through the years, at times when the Spirit moved me, some short stories that had never found any traction with any publisher. Because, you know, when I started work as a lawyer, in 1975, there was a really robust magazine publishing industry, which consisted of some slick magazines that published some fiction. You know, like Ladies' Home Journal would publish fiction. Saturday Evening Post sometimes would publish fiction. True, the magazine for men would publish fiction. And then there was the big pulp market for mystery stories and science fiction and fantasy stories and romance magazines and so on like that. And all of that is gone now. Print media has not gone completely, but there's not many magazines left. There are no pulp magazines to speak of anymore that still are in existence. So the market, that market's just pretty much gone. So I had these kind of in my file, and then I was reading in 2014 that there was a new e-zine. That's the new phenomenon, the electronic magazine. There's a number of them. And some of them are artsy little things or big things that would they wouldn't ever want anything I did. I have a supernatural component to my stories, as you will tell from the title. But, you know, they write these little stories about unicorns prancing around and fairies turning unicorns into cats or whatever they do. And that wouldn't appeal to me, and my stories wouldn't appeal to them. But anyhow, there's this new e-zine called Liberty Island Mag that had been organized by a guy named Paul Bernstein and another guy named Adam Bellow, the latter being Saul Bellows, fairly well-known novelist, Saul Bellow's son. And they wanted to do this, what some people have called conservatorial, which is somewhat conservative, but also just contrarian. Just kind of offbeat counterculture. And I thought that was pretty interesting. So they had submission guidelines and a link online that you could submit something to. So I dug up one of my old short stories and I sent it in, and they took it. I didn't get paid much of anything. In theory, I was going to get paid. It never really transpired too much. But, and so then, I can't remember the young woman's name that was corresponding with me at the time. She said, "Do you have anything else?" So I pulled another one out and sent it to her. And she said, "Well, we like this one too. And you can send more later, but we're going to run these two now." So they published the first two, and they did actually in inverse order. One of them was called Reunion, which is a ghost story set in a high school reunion. And that's going to come out in the story collection next year. I'll tell you about that later. And then the second one was a story about a judge who was making a decision on a boring day in court in that case that she got interested in. And I can't remember what the title for that was. And they took several more. So their staff changed. They never were terribly well run, and I think that's changing. But the guy that they I was sending things to was a guy named David Swindle, whom I still know. And he wasn't in New York, but in California. So I sent him an email, and by that time I had several stories. And I said, "Would y'all be interested in publishing a collection of my stories?" He says, "No, well, you can self-publish those, but I think you ought to try writing a novel." This was in end of 2017, beginning of 2018. And I thought, I hadn't thought about that. I've always just done short stories. And maybe I can do this. I can try it. So I started writing. And all during 2018, I wrote when I had time, in between phone calls, sometimes on Saturday mornings, in between, when office work was not that busy. And finally, I had 117,000 words and thought I was done, and had a pretty good reaction from my beta readers. Does anybody know what a beta reader is? Somebody. Okay. A beta reader is somebody who reads and comments on your stuff. A beta reader can make copy editing recommendations, but basically the purpose of the beta readers is to say, is this working? What's wrong with this scene? And I had a pretty positive response. So I sent it in, and at first the word from David and his crew at Liberty Island was that it looked pretty good, but then they decided they didn't like it. And I finally decided, so I rewrote it, and they still didn't like it. And I said, "Why don't you write something else?" Well, by that time, I was already 30,000 words into the sequel. And I said, to hell with this. I'm not going, and I didn't and don't have an agent. So, thinking, try to hawk this and send inquiry letters to Simon and Schuster or Charles Scribner or some of the publishing houses that are still doing this? I don't think so. Because I found out about something called Kindle Direct Publishing. Now, Kindle Direct Publishing is the arm of Amazon that caters to independent or indie writers like me. And if anybody's going to ask me how much money have I made with this, the answer is so far not a lot. Because I'll tell you that Jeff Bezos didn't get to be a billionaire by figuring out ways where you can make money. Right. He did it by figuring out ways he can make money. So you don't get much after he takes his cut, but I'm doing this mostly for fun. And I haven't advertised anything yet because you have to pay for it. And I think now that I have 3, I'm going to do that. I am getting some traction for promoting my book on Facebook and especially on Twitter. Because I've had more people mistake of looking at my books through Twitter than anything else. So anyway, first thing I decided to do is it was too long. That's one of the criticisms that David and Paul and Adam and that bunch had about it. And so I went through and cut about 27,000 words. It's still the longest of 3 books. And there's there's 2 reasons for doing it. One is some of the stuff I cut I should have. It made the book move better to have that stuff out. And then the other reason is it's just simple economics. And this is true whether a book is published by an indie writer or if it comes through an actual publishing house. Believe me, if the traditional publishers could push a button or cast a spell to make Amazon go away, they'd do it. And of course, you can sell books through some other sites. Barnes & Noble has their own site, and Apple runs one. But the 800-pound gorilla is Amazon. There's no question about that. So I didn't go through Smashwords or anything like that, any of the other options I had. I read up on it. Had some great help from an indie writer in Johnson City, Sam B. Miller II. His books I like pretty good. You can find his books on Amazon too. And so I got it cut. I had it, I thought, copy edited pretty well because I had about 8 people reading it and making suggestions. And so I liked it, but I realized something. I couldn't format for poop. I really couldn't. I could not. I can do Microsoft Word pretty good, but I couldn't format it the way they wanted. So I got online and looked at Fiverr. Does anybody know what Fiverr is? Fiverr is independent contractors, and they're worldwide. And they advertise and say, I will format your book for as low as, some of them say, $10. Well, you get what you pay for. For ethics, I really paid too much. It looks nice, but I really paid too much, but they're good people. A company called Emerald Inc., which is in Denver. And then I found contractors for the other 2 on Fiverr, and they formatted my book, and they gave it to me in EPUB, which is what Amazon wants for your Kindle version, and also in PDF, which is what they want for your print version. But going back to another reason for cutting the size of the book, the way that anybody gets paid, whether you're a publishing house, now the publishing house is a little bit different because they have their own printing contracts. But if you print through Amazon, the way they figure is the first thing that Amazon does is to calculate the cost of printing the book, because they don't keep an inventory. They print as they go. And so then you decide how much you want to add to that, knowing what your selected royalty fee is going to be. And so if you give them too long a book, guess what happens to the printing cost? Which means you can't afford to price it too high or nobody's going to buy it. So what does that do to the amount left for the calculation of your royalty? It brings it down. So you want to keep those printing costs, pretty reasonable if you can. So anyhow, I uploaded it, and they took it. I got to tell you about the cover. I've got a contractor, and these people are all over the world. 2 of my contractors have been in the United Kingdom. 1 of them is in Austria, and 1 of them is in Morocco. I mean, this is just a worldwide operation because everything's done at the speed of light electronically. So I found this young woman who, according to her webpage, is in Austria, to design my cover. And I had some input into it. So she came up with this. I think it's a pretty good looking cover. And she's done all 3 covers. I've had 3 different formatting contractors, and they've all done a pretty good job. But so anyhow, once you've done it once, you know how to do it. So if you're going, and remember, this took place at about the time I was transitioning from being a full-time partner in my law practice to being counsel, being semi-retired, and so I was getting more and more time to write. So Pathways, the second book, came out a bit faster. And then the third book, Snowstorm, that I wanted to get on the market before Christmas, and I did, because it's set at Christmas. Now, it's a Christmas story in about the same sense that Die Hard is a Christmas movie. But it does take place around Christmas time. It was the fastest of all because I carry my outlines largely in my head, but I had the clearest outline of start to finish for the third book of any of the 3. Because when I started The Ethics of Magic, I had the situation, and that was a college professor in trouble because he was not perceived as being politically correct enough for the late culture. And I wanted to have him be represented by a good lawyer, but I thought, what can I do to jazz up his story? And I thought, well, what if he were a wizard? And what if the college compliance officer who's trying to get rid of him were a witch? And what if the witch didn't like him and also hated his fiancée because they had been enemies in high school? And so it is a combination supernatural drama with all this witchcraft going on in the background while the lawyers are having at it in the hearing. And it highlights a problem that's been very real. And I don't have any direct experience with it, but I've talked to people and I've read about it. But our colleges are not very accepting and tolerant places anymore for some people. And there's supposedly ethical hearing procedures for people who are accused of wrongdoing are so often kangaroo courts. And having read the news stories, I wanted to highlight that. And I also wanted to have fun. And I sent ethics out as it was being written in installments to my beta readers. And one of them is some of y'all know, and that is our firm administrator at Wilson Worley, named Lisa Fuller. And it was good to send it out in installments. And I knew that I was connecting with a writer when she stalks into my office one afternoon. And I said, Lisa, what's wrong? Because she looked like she was about to explode. What have I done wrong now? You know, I guess that my collections last month made the management committee unhappy, or you know what? You know, so she says, you've got to promise me something. And I said, what's that? She said, something bad has got to happen to Monica Gilbert before this book is over. Because the witchy villain is Monica Gilbert. So I think I told a pretty good story. And I had some other goals in mind. One thing, you know, and one is I wanted to highlight this social issue, but I wanted to have an entertaining story to do it. The second is that I wanted to write a book that would appeal to women as much as to men. I wanted men to like it and women to like it. And so I made the lead lawyer in the story a woman. And I had three models for her, three lawyers that I know and have known for some time. And two of them are working moms. And so one of the themes in the story is that the lawyer, whose name is Catherine Turner, is always looking at her watch and running out of a meeting because she's late to pick up her son for soccer practice. And believe me, if you have been a working mom, or if you have worked in an office with any working parent these days, you know how that works. But for men too sometimes, but especially for women. So then I wanted to have diverse characters. And so the associate attorney working with Catherine is a guy named Mark Washington, who's African American, and a real independent thinker. And another subplot is that he is in a romantic relationship with one of the firm's paralegals, and which is against the rules. But he thinks he's got Catherine Turner fooled, but he doesn't. And you read the book and see how that goes. The Pathways of Magic, sort of the same thing. I introduced a new character named Alyssa McCormick. And this came by because I got challenged on Twitter to write she said, can you write a story about a real kick-ass female character? An old white guy like you. And I said, watch me. So Alyssa McCormick was an all-conference gymnast at University of Virginia, trained in witchcraft in Wales by one of her friends, an investment advisor. The same friend, his boyfriend, was an SAS officer who trained her in unarmed combat. And I had a lot of fun with Alyssa McCormick. She's also got legal trouble because both the CIA and the FBI think she's got a spell that she doesn't have, but she knows that poor old Mitch McCaffrey, the main character in the first book, has it because it's in the books that her uncle left him. So she's got the CIA after her, and the CIA sends werewolves. And the FBI after her, and they're going to prosecute her. So Mitch, good old Mitch, refers her to Catherine Turner, who pulls in her associate, Ben Callahan. Ben Callahan gets involved with the client, Alyssa, which he is not supposed to do under the firm rules. And I'll give you a sneak preview of one scene. So Alyssa walks into Catherine's office and she says, I want to accept your retainer. I want you all to represent me. I've talked to Ben about that. And Catherine says, that's wonderful. And she said, there's something else I got to tell you, because Ben is going to, but it's going to embarrass him. I just want to tell you, the two of us are involved. And Catherine says, involved how? And of course, Alyssa explains it to her, and Catherine hits the ceiling, and she says, I think you're going to make an exception. I'll sign anything you want. And Catherine says, signing doesn't make any difference. She said, it will. I want to hand you my check for the retainer. So she hands a cashier's check for $300,000 across the desk to Catherine, and Catherine's thought is, oh hell, I know the management committee, I think there's going to be an exception. That's me making fun of lawyers. So I had a lot of fun with that one too. The third one is set at Christmas time in a big house on top of the hill with a blizzard that hasn't been, it's a record blizzard coming into town, not too far away from where Alyssa and Mitch are, and they're and Mitch's wife Diana. I hadn't told you much about Diana, but she's one of my favorite characters. And Diana's kids are having Christmas, and in the middle of that, with all air traffic shut down, there's an alien invasion, and they can't. And the Defense Intelligence Agency can't send anybody but Alyssa and Mitch. And see, I found out in the second book, in a couple of scenes with, particularly featuring Alyssa, that I could write action sequences. So in the third book, I just went nuts. My friend Sam says, "You're in the let's kill everybody mode, aren't you?" So there's a lot of stuff in them. I think they're fun. I've had a lot of fun writing them, and I'm going to give you some more. And now I'll answer questions, and somebody's got one.
So this is a trilogy?
Yeah, there's three of them.
All right, and did you bring copies to sell today?
I have copies. I have copies you can look at, but I don't have enough to sell. It helps me more if you buy them on Amazon, but if you buy the paperback, I will sign.
Okay.
And I actually, if I just haven't ordered enough authors' copies to sell, and the ones I've got, I've promised people to send to them so they can give them as Christmas gifts.
If I get them on Amazon and then take them to your office and leave them there?
Sign the one. I'll sign the one. I'll sign the one. I can't sign the Kindle books. The Kindle books are cheaper, but I can't sign them.
What bad happens to Monica in the first book?
She gets really embarrassed at the hearing because she loses her cool twice. And
That's all?
Well, the first time she blows up the court report, she loses control of her magic, and the court reporter's equipment blows up, and they have to adjourn the hearing. Although the hearing officers don't know that's happened, but Mitch does. The second time, the college doesn't know it, but Mark Washington has turned the witness, and the witness decides to tell the truth. And Monica tries a spell to compel the witness testimony, which Mitch blocks. See, nobody knows this. The lawyers and the hearing officers don't know this is going on. And she loses her cool again, Deborah. But I'm not going to tell you this when you have to buy the book and read it.
Off Amazon.
Off Amazon. Yes, ma'am.
So, do you anticipate in your head that there's more to this series, or do you have another storyline for the next set of books?
The next book is going to be a story collection, because the Haunted Law Firm shows up in some of those stories. But I'm going to write a new novella to go at the end of it that will be in line, and then there will be an actual fourth novel, but I don't have a plot for it. I don't have a plot for it yet. I'm probably gone on too long. I know somebody got unlike that's old. semi-retired folks, some of you have to get back to work. But I'll be glad to talk to you more for a few minutes. I've got to go to the vet's office because we've got a sick cat.
Excellent. Bob, thank you so much, and to show our appreciation, we have made a donation in your name to our signature project, which is our kiosk down at the Veterans Memorial there at Dobbins Bennett. So thank you. A couple things.